stakeholders with us? Anybody new out there? Kathy Woolsey, I saw we had a few new stakeholders from the Public Service District. Is anybody new with us here this afternoon? You're on mute,
Yeah.
Kathy.
We have David Schaefer. I think he was sent an invitation. He's our new district manager,
Oh, great.
and maybe he'll be coming in. I don't see him on there yet.
Oh, I see him. I see him now. Yeah.
Okay. And
David, are you with us? He's on mute. I just see his name.
well, I know he knows how to Zoom because we did all our interviews with him this summer on Zoom.
Okay.
So yeah.
Terrific. And
No, he's off, Mayor.
Mhm.
David, are you there with us? No.
I guess not.
And Mayor Woolsey, good to see you. How you doing?
Happy New Year. I'm doing all right.
Happy New Year. My co-chair here, so good to see you. Good to see everybody. I think everybody, I mean, you can look around on your screen. I think everybody knows everybody pretty well. I mean, as any other new folks joining us or anybody feel a need for any introduction of any kind to everybody? Okay, well, hearing none there, I think we'll go right on to our working group updates, and I'm glad to report I think they've been working on some stuff since our last meeting. So if we could just start with Ashley with technology, our technology work group. Ashley, you want to give us a report on what y'all been up to?
Hey, Mayor. So we haven't met since the main stakeholder meeting that we had back in November. But the group has, all the entities have executed the MOA. And so that's been done. And Matt or Brett may want to talk more about the actual scope of the testing that they've been, I guess, finalizing with Woolport.
Yeah, actually, I can start out, at least if Brett's on, he can certainly jump in and correct some of my errors as Brett's been doing most of the negotiating. But I think for the technical group, we set ourselves some goals at the first meeting, which were basically to compile some of the common data sources, which CWS provided some information. The PSD sent in for some information. We kind of compiled septic tank locations, water and sewer line locations, the different jurisdictions and what type of land uses are within the basins. We kind of have a common data picture now for the both the technical group as well as the other groups to consider moving forward. We did approve through all three entities the memorandum of agreement for collaborative monitoring and prepared a monitoring plan that we'll be submitting to DHEC probably in the next week or so for each entity to start that TMDL compliance component. And then as Ashley mentioned, we've just about finalized the negotiations off of what's contained within the MOA to actually do the monitoring and sampling work with Woolport. So that's being finalized over the next week or so. Will involve basically the regulatory minimum of wet weather sampling, but also we have additional sampling in there for dry weather conditions. We want to get a better picture of what's going on in the area. We have some sampling in there for basic characterization of what is the source, what is the likely source of the contamination, whether it's human or animal, a few other things you can write down with microbial source tracking. And then we have basically the ability to add in additional sampling sites as those become potentials. I mean, Mark and some other people have been looking and talking with property owners and looking at options of where we could possibly source or site additional sampling locations, and we'll be building that in as we collect our data. So it's a good start. Now we need to set some additional goals, I guess, and get ourselves ready for 2021, but we're pleased to report that we've been making good progress so far.
Good, terrific. Any questions for Matt or Ashley about any of that, y'all?
Matt, this is Carol. I was just wondering, would it be good for you all to send the monitoring report in final round? I know it's above my pay grade for sure, but I think maybe just for our files, it would be interesting to have that.
Yeah, we certainly can. The monitoring report is actually one of those things when you open it up that looks like a relatively simple form document. They're not, the submittal component is not that complicated. I mean, it's easy for me to say that, but it's not that complicated. But we will send that out as we get it. We're just doing our final edits between the 3 agencies today, actually. So we'll send that out as soon as the 3 agencies have confirmed at a staff level it's good. Get that out to the group and submit that into meeting.
Great. And then, Mr. Mayor, I just am thinking of it. I think I owe Liz and certainly the technical group my apologies. I know that I called this working group technology the first couple of times I helped draft the agenda. I thought I corrected it for the new year, but evidently I didn't. So I apologize, but it is the technical group, not the technology group.
Technical,
That
gotcha.
changed. Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. I've been accused of worse. Thank you. All right, so is Andrew, are you with us? Andrew Wonderly for citizen education engagement?
Andrew is not with us, Mr. Mayor. He could not join us today. And I
Okay.
can tell you that that particular work group has not met since our earlier meeting. But Kim, I don't know, does Clemson have any updates? I hate to always throw the the ball to you on this one, but I feel like y'all are doing the best leading us in this area.
Yeah, thanks, Emily. I just put in the chat. This was about almost a year-long project to create a website for septic tank management, sort of Q&A forum. And there was a team of folks who worked on that, and it went through peer review with DHEC. And it needs a little bit of imagery just to, kind of help with some aesthetics, but all the content is there. And I think it will be a really good platform to send people to for frequently asked questions surrounding septic tank management and use. There is a place on there for people to sign up. We're going to have sort of this annual, letter that goes out to people to sort of remind them, because per DHEC recommendations, these tanks should be inspected every 1 to 2 years, and typically speaking, serviced or pumped every 3 to 5 years. So having sort of that annual communication will help with that. And the only other thing that I'll mention that I think will be of interest, I'm sending it off to be published either at the end of this week or beginning of next week. Dr. Denise Sanger's on here. She was a reviewer for it. But it's Clemson, of course, has the Home and Garden Information Center, our fact sheet series. We like to brag that it gets more hits than the football team. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but we say it anyways. But anyhow, a fact sheet on troubleshooting a degrading salt marsh that I authored and had some great reviewers on there. One, as I said, Dr. Denise Sanger, but really sort of, site assessment, trying to document the scope of the degradation or the stress of the marsh. What are some potential factors that might be adding to that? And then looking at environmental stressors. So talking about sea level rise and drought and things of that nature. So really trying to focus mostly on what people can do to, looking at how these stressors are cumulative and they compound one another, and together can, really cause harm to the salt marsh, and how, if we can reduce at least an aspect of 1 or 2 of those stressors, how that can ultimately help with that. And I did say one other thing that we'll be working on is the living shorelines aspect. I think, and I don't know if somebody from DHEC is on here and wants to speak to that, but that is through, in the process of becoming a regulatory process for people to be able to, apply for a permit for a living shoreline to stabilize their shoreline, using oysters or vegetation, et cetera. And we'll be working with DNR and DHEC and Nature Conservancy and a host of other folks to really provide tools that will help, guide that process moving into 2021.
Great. Thank you, Kim. Any questions or comments for Kim and Emily?
Yes, Kim, I briefly looked at the website here. It looks really good. Do you have like a printable flyer or something, or have you thought about providing one in this system? So you click on it and there's some shorter version that could be distributed.
Kim?
Oh, sorry. I accidentally hit leave instead of mute. So I jumped out for like 15 seconds. What was
All right,
that?
I'll try again.
Sorry.
Great website, a lot of interesting information. Of course, I haven't looked at much of it, just opened it up. Have you all considered, or have you a printable flyer that would have some kind of shorter version of this, including like a link to the main page, something that we could print out and distribute, at a building, a town hall, or door to door, or whatever? Thanks.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great point. And I definitely think that's something that the outreach committee or education committee, Emily, what I can't remember what we're calling ourselves, but is, raising awareness of the resources. And so I think there's a lot of potential for that. So thank you. And really, the objective of the website is to be very robust and to have really you're buying land. You can go to that website to get information. You live in a Native American tribal territory. You can go to that website to get information. It's really meant to have, we really tried to think of every possible case scenario that you could run into. But I agree, for most people, they really need to know, like, how do I know that my septic tank is failing, or what are things I need to not put down my drain, or those types of things.
Right. So I have a question, and maybe we're already doing this or have the ability, but our little map that identified on here with little black dots, 340 potential properties that have septic tanks. Do we have those addresses to where we could literally do a direct communication, or as someone just said, door-to-door flyers, or go specifically to the properties that we know? Mark?
Yes, I've been talking with Chris Wanamaker about that today, and he's going to be getting me those addresses for the properties based on jurisdiction, and we can mail out something, just to have people aware that they need to be taking care of these issues. And if something pops up, maybe we can take it a step further. But yeah, we've got that information.
Oh, great. I think that'd be a kind of simple and easy and a good thing to do. That's great. Thank you, Mark.
No problem.
Let us know if you need any help on that. All right. Anything else on citizen engagement, Emily? We're good for now?
We're good for now, Mr. Mayor.
All
Mr.
right.
Chairman, it's Carol. I just have one follow-up question that occurred to me as Kim was talking about the great information for septic tank owners, and especially signing on, filling out their own information, so they'll have some sort of reminder or whatever it was you said would come back to them. It occurred to me, and I'm not a septic owner, but I know a lot of people have neglected their septic cleanouts, and probably it's out of sight, out of mind. If it's working, they don't worry about it. And it's occurring to me to just ask the question on how do we assure people that if they self-disclose that, they have a septic and they know for sure they haven't been cleaning it out, it's not some sort of finable offense or any sort of fee, revenue source for the jurisdictions to come back on them. And I don't know if we want to put that, thought in someone's mind, but that was the first thing that occurred to me, that I might not want to tell people I have a septic because I haven't cleaned it out in 20 years or whatever.
Yeah, and that's a great point, and kind of one of the sort of, I don't know, niches I think that Clemson and some of the other education organizations find ourselves in, is that because we're not a regulatory authority, because I don't work for DHEC, there's certain communication that will occur, and I know particularly for our relationship with DHEC, we've been working more and more closely on different aspects of getting information out that might not be as well received potentially from somebody who's also in charge of enforcing the rules, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
We'll keep it in the name of Clemson.
Keep in mind, yeah.
Yeah. All right, thank you, Kim, appreciate it. So we got one other group, our policy group. Ross Appel, you got something for us?
Mayor, I'm sure we got some things we can report on the policy front. I'm not sure where Andrew is today, but I'm sure I'll see him in the ocean tomorrow morning. So I'll catch him up on everything we're talking about. But on the policy front, we still continue to talk about this watershed plan. And in December, Patrick reached out about a potential donation of a plan or some consulting services from a engineering firm. And I had some preliminary conversations with Matt about that. And I think that that's something we ought to look forward to or look into. I know that there were some questions about whether or not we could get everything together for the 2021 funding cycle or not. I'll be honest, I don't know all the ins and outs of this, but I do think that this is something worth pursuing and putting our heads together and coming up with a good plan on that. So maybe that's something we can all get together and talk through, maybe after this meeting or something with the relevant folks. We've got that, and as we continue our discussion about these septic systems and getting together a plan for how we address this. I know we talked a little bit earlier on this meeting about public information, but also the county's got an ordinance on the books right now requiring mandatory connections. I certainly don't want to put anyone from the county on the spot right now, but I think that at some point it would be a good idea to get sort of the latest from the county in terms of how they're interpreting that ordinance. I know the Attorney General's office has kind of weighed in on that issue. That's something else that's out there. I mean, there's sort of a legal regulatory approach to this that's being taken as well. And that's what we've got on those topics. I'm just reading through my notes from our last meeting. There was also a discussion about some of our policy subcommittee members coordinating with DHEC a little bit regarding whether there's a more kind of coordinated approach we can take to this. In other words, we do a little recon with regards to kind of what they're looking for, and we can sort of reverse engineer our plan and application and strategy to sort of fit what they're trying to do, because there seem to be some pretty strong indications that they want to do some work in this watershed. And by the way, if I'm mentioning anything here that somebody has more information on and wants to jump in, I see Emily shaking her head. Please fill in the gaps with some more information.
Yeah, happy to do it. So right before the holidays, Andrew and I, along with Representative Wetmore and Senator Sen, had a really good follow-up conversation with the staff from DHEC's 319 program. They walked us through all of the questions that I think, compiled at our last policy work group meeting, just to get a little bit more information about availability of funding the next couple years, what they're looking for in applications, how it works with in-kind services being used for the match. And we got some really positive answers and feedback. Also got a better understanding of the timeline. So essentially what they indicated to us is at the end of the day, if we do have a watershed plan in place, we would need to have that submitted at the beginning of May. So I think in our minds, it's giving us potentially a little bit more wiggle room than we realized we may have had initially. So I do think it makes sense to start having a serious discussion about whether or not we're pursuing this path with Terracon. I know, Patrick, you have more information on that you can provide to the group. But all that's to say, in that conversation with DHEC, they again reiterated that they have funding that they would like to allocate to the Charleston region. So in my mind, that is just the signal to us that we should try and at least get something in place. And if it doesn't happen this year, it doesn't happen. But I don't think there's any harm in moving forward on some of these initial steps. Patrick, do you want to jump in with more of the information on the Terracon side of things?
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Emily. That is good news from DHEC. So y'all will remember the last conversation we had about this. The procurement was one of the big challenges, right? Was this springtime 319 application deadline, and the jurisdictions and CWS have their processes, and that takes longer than the amount of time we had. And the plan itself cost approximately $40,000 to put together. And talking to Terracon about this, they are, a large engineering firm that most of you are probably familiar with. As a matter of business development and philanthropy is the way I would describe it. They offered to put that plan together pro bono. And they have provided a scope of work that I think a smaller group of some of the technical folks have seen. I'm happy to provide that scope of work to the larger group. And they are offering to move forward with that plan for free. Once that plan is drafted, that in no way obligates anybody to do anything, even read the plan. It doesn't mean we have to apply for 319 on any certain schedule, but we would have that plan complete and in the can for whatever future grants we wanted to apply for. And if it made sense to do so on this now extended timeline that Emily mentions, that's great. If we don't do it until 2022, that's great too. And we won't have to find the $40,000. So I would love, given that the whole group has voted to pursue the plan, and we have a free plan on the table, I would love it if we could, take advantage of that and check that box. So when the right opportunity comes up with 319, we're ready to go.
So
Right.
I like the price there, Patrick. Way to go, man.
Mr. Mayor, this is Sandy. Also, I think worth bringing up is that we confirmed, I know that Kathy Woolsey had some questions about, how much can we actually get out of this? I think Ms. Jackson, Councilwoman Jackson, also wanted to know how much can we get if we're going to have to put any money into it, and how the matches are. There is no set amount that they will give. I mean, it's federal money that comes in regularly. They said that it has waxed and waned over the years, but it is generally a good bit of money, and that our area is due. And she even, I think, sent some example or samples that, from other areas. I know Andrew was the one taking all the great notes on this, and it was right before the holidays. But anyway, I was highly encouraged because I think we're looking at big dollar figures potentially. And we may not get everything we asked for. We're probably going to get, a pretty good bit. So I would love to try and go ahead and push it forward for this year. And like everybody else said, if it doesn't work, we can do it for next year. Now, there was a specific way that we needed Terra, I guess you're calling it.
Terracon.
Terracon to handle whatever they're doing, because for us to be able to even try and use it as a match, there was some way we have to finagle that. Andrew, I think, probably took better notes, or maybe Ashley, somebody did.
Okay, so I'm hearing that maybe our technical committee needs to work out a couple of details with Terracon. But other than that, is there any reason not to proceed with this generous offer from them?
Not that I can see. I was very excited. They had several people on there. They wanted to help. The very next day, they emailed us some ideas and thoughts and different things that we can use as match money that we may not have thought about. So I would definitely think that this looks like a golden opportunity.
Right.
Emily.
All right. So,
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a quick question? Sorry.
Sure.
Emily, did we follow up? I know that at the end of that DHEC call, they gave us the name of the local watershed plan person. I'm sorry, I don't remember what his name was, but I would just want to make sure that hopefully we could credit this, even though it's an in-kind contribution instead of an actual dollar outlay, maybe simultaneously while we're signing agreements with Terracon. Emily, maybe if we could follow up with that gentleman who handles the local watersheds, just to ensure that the value of $40,000 could still be counted down the road if we were to get a grant as part of our match. So
Yeah.
just maybe on a list of questions for when we speak with the watershed.
So Spencer, this is Mayor Woolsey. Spencer's point about, as we sign agreements with Terracon, I don't know what kind of agreement we have to sign to get a gift, but that's a question in my mind is who signs this agreement? This is a recommending body that doesn't sign agreements. And
Right.
so the body could recommend that somebody go forward with it, but I would think who goes forward with it is the three jurisdictions jointly or one of the three or something.
Well,
That's
part
it.
of our
And,
discussion with DHEC was that most likely CWS would be a good leader.
Well, and guys, I want to jump in here. There's two things we're talking about simultaneously. One is who signs the contract with Terracon, and that would be that would be the waterkeeper. And then there's who files the 319 grant. And I want to make sure we're talking about them separately.
I'm only talking about the agreement with Terracon.
The waterkeeper is the current thinking to get around procurement processes that take more time than we have.
By the way, I don't know that procurement processes take any time, particularly more time, but in any case, that sounds fine to me. If they want our permission, why would they need our permission to get this done?
I don't know that they do. We just want to make sure we get credit for it. I just remember in our discussion, that was an issue, the way that that's going to be phrased or handled. If we want credit for that 40,000, we have to handle it the correct way. So we do need to find out if Waterkeeper is going to be the contract signer. He may need, they may also need to be the leader, and they just don't have administrative staff.
Yeah, and Andy Miller is the watershed manager, and he did reach out to Andrew right after that meeting. So I think we can follow up with Andrew after today and make sure we communicate this to him for their next conversation and loop Andy into all of this.
All right. So Emily, can we rely on you and Andrew maybe to check those boxes, those questions that just arose? But unless I hear some objection here, that we have consensus that we fully support Waterkeeper accepting a donation from Terracon to create for us a watershed management plan. That sound good, everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
All right.
Maybe the only thing I would mention is that when I had some conversations with Matt about this, he had indicated that, we want to make sure we provide some level of guidance or scoping specifics to Terracon as part of this effort. And I just want to make sure that, Matt's feedback is part of this process. So we make this as efficient and, proper as possible. So that all sounds good. And then just to round it out, we've got Representative Wetmore wants to mention something. So we'll turn it over to her on the policy side.
Hey, just a quick note that through my previous work with Folly, we had actually, right as I was leaving, gotten a grant, a federal grant to work with North Carolina Sea Grant Consortium on a septic adaptation and vulnerability study. And so technically it's intended to be a study of coastal septic. And so I actually raised this water quality task force to the septic team on our last call. I'm going to continue to kind of work on that grant since it was one that I had started. And so I just wanted to make y'all aware of that as a potential resource and also source of information as they, we're only about 6 months into the study, so we're still pretty early on, but we're studying things like how high up the septic needs to be. And it's intended to be an adaptation study if you're going to keep septic, which may not be our focus completely. But one of the things I also wanted to mention was that they're doing a legal review of sort of authority to enact these sorts of requirements. And so if we have specific legal questions like the tie-in or other things, we've actually got the benefit through that group of a law professor in North Carolina who's being funded through this grant and is completely willing to work on, on questions that benefit both this project and that project. So I just wanted to make y'all aware of that. And if it's a great source of expertise, particularly on septic, if that is behooves us as we move forward.
Great. Thank you, Spencer. Appreciate that. So, Ross, you good?
I got one quick final item, and then we can definitely move on. Is want to give a shout out to Charleston Water Systems for putting together the mapping for where these septic locations are, and well, more about where the existing infrastructure is. So as we're analyzing these issues that Spencer just mentioned, the mandatory connection issue, if it becomes something we can do from a legal standpoint, we got to know where the infrastructure is. We got to understand which, properties are potentially eligible for this tie-in. So I think that by bringing all this stuff together as we continue to have these conversations, that's where we'll want to be. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think that this is something we ought to think about, because education's great, information's great, but at the end of the day, we may need to start really focusing on specific properties and using all the tools at our disposal to get people to connect to modern infrastructure to hopefully eliminate these problems, keep the what out of the water. Simple as that. So that's the report of the policy committee. Thank you.
Great. Keep the what out of the water. That sounds like a good way to end it out.
I almost said it.
Well, having given that thanks to Charleston Water System, Ken, I see you and Mark there. Do y'all have anything you'd like to add or report?
Mr. Mayor, this is Ken. The only thing I would like to report to the group, I think we mentioned at the last meeting that we do have a conference call scheduled next week with Andrew and our lab staff manager and the private contract lab that we've selected to do the water quality work. If you remember, Charleston Water and our board committed $5,000 of funding to do some additional what we call bacterial type study testing in the creek. And so we are getting that rolling now that we're in the new year, starting next week. And we're going to try to develop a sampling plan and consider a schedule and work with Andrew, of course, very closely in that. And we'll keep you and all the task force apprised as to how that is proceeding. So stay tuned.
Thank you. That is wonderful. And I hope that we can use your $5,000, your generous $5,000, as well as your time and effort. If we could keep track of all that, I think we could use that as in kind.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely, you can.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Glad to
Thank
do
you
it.
for that report and that contribution to the effort, Ken. We really appreciate it. And so with that kind of report, setting the stage, I'm just going to open the floor. If anybody has anything notable, even if it didn't come from one of the committees that they want to report to the group, the floor is open. Anybody got anything for us? Yes, Kathy.
Last time we talked about flying over the marsh to check the temperatures. And I talked to Sean Engelman back in December about using their drone. Now they just got this drone in November and have only played around with it a little bit. I guess talking about if it would be possible for them to fly along the edge of the marsh and take pictures and see if there was some temperature differences. And I thought January and February would be a good time because the water would be cold and the water coming out of the septic tank would be warmer. Then he started asking me technical questions like how warm or how cold. And I'm like, I don't really know. But so I guess I might have to find that report that was made. I guess it was in Bluffton and look at that too. But he seemed to be open to it. And we actually haven't even talked this over with the chief or the district manager. I just kind of ran it by him to see if we could figure out whether we could do it yet. But I think it would be an inexpensive way, again, another in-kind thing. And it would be good training for our firemen to practice with this drone too, I think. Undoubtedly, we might have to find a body or something in a marsh. So it might be good for that. But
Boy,
so anyway, just let you know that they're thinking about it, and we're gonna try to find a place to launch and kind of buzz around the marsh and see what's going on.
great.
So
That's good news. And the city of Charleston has gotten a few individuals certified as drone operators. You almost have to have a license and all this training. So if you need any assistance with any of that, let us know. Great. All right. Anybody got anything else? The floor is open. All right. Now, we had on the agenda to discuss establishing goals for the task force. I mean, we have our overall mission to satisfy the DHEC 5-year mandate. And I think we're on a good path here with getting a watershed management plan going, and the different reports you just heard from our working groups. They all seem to be heading in a good collaborative direction. Does anybody have any thoughts about 2021 goals that we're not kind of already heading in that direction already? Yeah.
Well,
Yes,
this
ma'am.
might,
Okay. Go ahead,
Senator
Sandra.
Sen?
oh, okay. Well, no, the only thing that I was thinking, and this is a stretch I know since it's been in the plans for a while, but I think part of the problem with Ellis Creek likely could be generated from upstream, like near the AME apartments, where there's constantly always issues there. And I don't know if we can't get some credit for doing all the work that's going to be performed under Central Park as part of in kind as well.
You mean the drainage and stormwater work that's anticipated there?
Right, because whenever the stormwater is overtakes the sewer system, that's when there's a problem. So I think we could maybe figure out a way to tie some of that in. Yeah, there's just a thought, but I think a lot of the pollution easily, I could see it being generated from up that direction.
Interesting. Any thoughts on that, anybody?
Yes, this is Matt Fountain. I mean, we can certainly take a look at it. Part of the challenge with 319 and TMDL watersheds is exactly this this situation, that things that the entities do that are regulatorily required as part of the TMDL program are generally not eligible for 319 funding, because they're trying to say you're already obligated to do this work, so we're not going to provide you additional funding towards your doing of this work. That's where often entities like using the Waterkeeper and Clemson and kind of going above and beyond kind of minimum regulatorily required activities have a lot of advantage for a 319 option. But the capital project work is somewhat outside of a traditional 319 approach. It's really not like a constructed BMP or something. So it's something we can look at. It's definitely more complicated than it would be in a normal watershed and just like a 303D listed impaired water or something along those lines. But it's worth taking a look at. I think it'll be a little harder than we think it is, but.
Okay, well, or at least maybe PSD can get some credit for putting in, I don't know what they call it, but it was some type of apparatus that would stop stormwater from infiltrating the sewer system in heavy downpours. That I think possibly we could use, because that that keeps the sewage from getting in, you know, or getting.
I think that would be a good goal, is just to track all the expenses we are incurring in the watershed and see what's eligible for matching. I think that's a good thing to talk about. Some of these things, just like with the PSD, I mean, trying to reduce SSOs is a regulatory obligation. But at the same time, I think we should track them. We should go back to the 319 program and talk to them about, hey, what's eligible, what's not eligible, and that's a good conversation.
And I can take care of that. That's part of what our discussion was. And I have to go back and figure out when our meeting was, but the next day or the day after, I did get an email from a lady from DHEC who was giving us some ideas. I'll go dig that up and share it with everybody.
Terrific. Thank you for that idea. Carol?
Thanks.
Thank you. It occurred to me, and I give Matt Fountain credit for this, but I think when we were talking about goal setting, it was more about having each of the working groups establish, goals that then we could make sure are synergistic and, giving the whole task force effort some momentum for the rest of the year. So maybe we could just ask each of the working groups to come back with a couple of goals that you agree are the most important, or the low-hanging fruit, however you decide are the things that you want to put your working group efforts toward. And then we can just have that sharing at our next meeting and make sure that we can see a logical fit. So when we start to talk about the task force and promoting ourselves to a grant entity or some other funding sources, we'll sort of have that interwoven, synergy.
Gotcha. Well, that makes sense. And honestly, it might just be the things that they're already kind of working on. But
Right.
if I could ask Ashley, and Andrew's not here, so Emily and Ross, as y'all meet between now and the next meeting, give us a little goal setting that you'd like to accomplish for 21. That'd be great. Just to keep us all focused. That'd be great. All right. So anybody else? Anybody got anything else to report or bring up?
I would just like to report that I believe we just sent on our James Island News email list a link and information that was shared today about the septic systems. So we're already working on sharing that information.
Great. Excellent. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ashley.
Thank you, Ashley.
Multitasking.
So our next meeting will be March 18th, and same time, 4 o'clock. I presume we'll still be Zooming then. And to be honest with you, to get such a diverse group together, even when COVID's over with, if that suits everyone, I think this is a great way, efficient way for us to continue to meet. So let's just keep that up. In the meantime, don't let the fact that we just meet quarterly get in the way. If we need to hear something, I think we've got the network with everybody's email addresses. If anybody's got a particular report they want to share or take action on something like the watershed management plan or something that comes up that we need to do between meetings, let's don't let a quarterly meeting get in the way of progress. Okay.
Okay.
And I presume I was being pretty informal here in conducting the meeting. I hope that's suitable for everyone, and first name basis is okay. We're trying to be as informal as possible. We're not taking minutes or anything anyway. So I hope that's okay with everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yes.
Well, great.
Good format.
Here again, everyone. Thanks for being a part of this. This is a great little networking effort here, and a great goal long-term to clean up Ellis Creek and the James Island drainage basin. So thanks for all of y'all for being a part of it.